Welcome to the Bowden Blitz ACC edition. I'm Joe Lisi, joined by former National Coach of the Year, Terry Bowden. Coach, a huge slate of action. Week number 5 in the ACC. It's shaping up to really dictate conference championships and, more importantly, college football playoff berths.
Well, exactly right. As we go into the season, we're getting better head-to-head competitions with the teams that are going to matter. And until they play each other, we can't really say which one's the best here, which one's the best there, because nothing gives you a better indication than head-to-head competition.
I do want to, before we get into the obvious matchups this coming Saturday, do want to jump into a couple of hot topics. One is Mack Brown and North Carolina. We saw them as an 11.5-point favorite this past Saturday in Chapel Hill get absolutely abused. They lose that matchup 70-50. Mack Brown and North Carolina do face Duke this coming weekend. They are underdogs in regards to that matchup. 3-1 overall, Terry. But give me your thoughts about overall Mack Brown. He couldn't get over the hump with Sam Howell and Drake May over the past couple of seasons. Any shot that this is the last season for Mack Brown in Chapel Hill?
Joe, I love Mack Brown. I know him very well, but that game will never go away. Giving up 70 to a group of 5 team when you're at North Carolina, it doesn't go away. It's always going to be remembered by North Carolina and James Madison. So what I would hope is that they can get a win or two in the rest of the season. I don't think it'll be against Duke, to be honest with you, but they get a couple of wins. And at the end of the season, Mack in his own way needs to really talk about his career and how good it's been, but also, like I say, it may be time for him to hang up the cleats.
In terms of expectation, though, we always talk about programs being able to compete for potentially an ACC championship and, more importantly, a national championship. We saw Drake May and North Carolina face off against Clemson a couple of years ago. They lost that matchup 39-10. It's one thing to win the ACC, but big picture, realistically, is North Carolina a potential spot where you can elevate to the likes of Clemson and Florida State, where you can run the table at 13-0 and crack the college football playoff?
You know, Joe, that's been a question that's been asked for a long time, and I've been a head coach in this business a long time, and I still think it is. It's a beautiful school. They've got a lot to offer. The right guy goes in there. I do believe they can win the conference championship and put themselves in a position to play for the national championship. Not a lot different than Clemson. People wouldn't have picked Clemson to have the success they had a few years back, and they hope to have again. So I do feel that's a great program. Mack Brown has done a great job there. He'll always be very special to North Carolina. But I think it's probably time that a young dynamic coach is pulled in there with the right salary, with the right amount of resources, and gives them a chance to compete for a national championship.
How important is it for the conference as a whole, Terry, to see the likes of Stanford step up against Syracuse that last Saturday and last weekend to get that victory 26-24? We saw Cal be very, very competitive against Florida State and Tallahassee Saturday night. How important is it for teams like Cal, Stanford, and SMU to be competitive, to bring parity, and more importantly, more competition to the conference as a whole to maybe elevate them to a college football playoff berth?
Well, big wins like we saw with Stanford and Cal, Cal against Auburn and the SEC and almost against Florida State, it gives them credibility. I think so many times teams from the South, the Southeast, the East feel like football is played differently, maybe better over here than on the West Coast. And when then a team like Stanford comes in and plays like they didn't win, a team like Cal comes over here to the Eastern United States and plays like that too, I think we began to see the great football is being played out there too. And I do think it enhances the value of the conference, which already has a great value now going coast to coast.
I want to bring up in regards to the current landscape and NIL and current situations across the nation as it relates to quarterbacks and potential star players. We saw UNLV's starting quarterback opt out, take a red shirt due to NIL concerns, not being promised certain things. And this is a team in UNLV right now, 3-0. They're challenging for a Mountain West championship. They're in recognition and in running, more importantly, for potentially the 12th spot in regards to the playoff. How detrimental is that to see that play out, where if players don't get the NIL or the promises that they received prior to transferring that this could be an issue, not just this year, but bigger picture for years to come?
See, I think that's been a problem all along. And again, I've been involved with NILs on a smaller basis. But the old saying that it has nothing to do with recruiting is crazy. It's always about recruiting. And sometimes when it's about recruiting and people get involved in the negotiations and nobody's on the same page, it becomes a problem. That's, I think, what happened at UNLV, and we've seen it before. And I think that's what's going to continue to happen because really, you see, the NCAA doesn't want to totally be involved. The schools don't want to totally be involved. Who wants to be in charge of it? And then something's going to be like this. You talk to a young man, you get him to come to your school, and look what he's done for your season. Then all of a sudden, you can't back up what you promised. And that happens, and all of a sudden he doesn't get what he needs. And now we see a quarterback that's leading UNLV to a great season say, no, I want my red shirt. I want to get out of here. And it's inevitable that's going to happen because we still have a lot of instability in the NIL situations and how they're controlled.
When you talk about NIL and you talk about transfer quarterbacks, none has had a bigger impact than Miami's quarterback from Washington State. Cam Ward lit it up yet again last week. They were basically a 17 and a half point favorite in that matchup on the road against USF. It was close for potentially 2 quarters, but in the end, they get a dominating road win. Miami's starting to look like that contender, right? They're starting to come into form, face an ACC opponent in Virginia Tech this coming Friday, but Cam Ward is playing lights out and is deserving right now through 4 weeks to be the front runner for the Heisman.
He really is. And you see how important the quarterback position is when it comes even to NILs. I mean, Florida State supposedly was in the hunt. Look what they are now. They didn't get him. Look where Miami is where they got him and how important that is. Because if you look at Miami down the road, they'll be favored, I think, in every game this season. And if they can get by a tough Louisville team, I can see them running the table and being undefeated, all because they won the NIL battle with Cam Ward.
And Cam Ward's lighting it up. We talked about prior to that game last week against USF, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, completing well over 68% of his passes. He can do it through the air, but he could also buy time and make plays with his legs. And that's the biggest attribute that Cam Ward has brought that offense. They're averaging well over 400 passing yards per game heading into that matchup against the USF Bulls. If they can run the table, 9.5 win total was the expected expectation in South Beach. If they could get to potentially 11 wins, win a conference championship with Mario Cristobal, they're going to be there. From what you've seen in regards to Miami, offense and defensive lines, are they as legit as Texas and the likes of Georgia and Alabama respectively, Terry?
I look at Miami a little bit like I look at Ole Miss. Unbelievable offensive numbers, unbelievable stats on offense, the style of play, the quarterback success. But they've also taken NFL and they've loaded up on defense. Look at the talent right now at Miami on defense, their defensive front, the way they can control people with their defense. I mentioned Ole Miss because I think they've done the same things. A couple of teams that maybe weren't good on both sides of the ball. We see these teams now not just have a great quarterback, because I've always said a great quarterback, a defense, and being able to run the football are the 3 things you need down the stretch to play for a championship. When it comes to a quarterback, Miami's got that. Defense, they've got that. The running game is coming along as well.
When Coach and I come back, we'll break down week number 5 in regards to the ACC. Great games on deck. We have Notre Dame and Louisville squaring off. We also have North Carolina and Duke. Florida State looking for their second win. They got off the mat against Cal. Can they do it on the road against a gutty SMU team that is 3-1 entering week number 4? We'll be right back on the ACC edition of the Bowden Blitz. Coming right back. Keep it where it is. Back on the Bowden Blitz ACC edition. Coach and I are going to jump right into week number 5. I talked about it right before break, Coach. Florida State gets off the mat last Saturday night in Tallahassee as a 2.5 point favorite against Cal. They jumped up early 7-0, but that game went right down to the wire. They were within striking distance, the Cal Bears were, but a defensive stand by Florida State seals the deal. They win it 14-9. They now go on the road to face a 3-1 SMU team. SMU did get the double-digit win over TCU last week, 66-42. 3-1 overall. This is their first ACC conference game. This is going to be a hornet's nest in Dallas. I think actually Florida State can be live in terms of this ball game, though.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State's going to get a couple more wins. I personally think SMU can run the ball too well. They've got answers on their football team. Offensively, they can still put points on the board, and I think that's what FSU cannot do. I don't think FSU has the answers to its problems. Doesn't mean they won't win a game or two. I just don't think it'll be this week. They don't have a quarterback solution. I think if they did, they would go to it. And just to go to a backup really may give them, it's not going to be the answer for them down the road. Quite often, you want to put in a young quarterback that, well, this guy's going to be our future. I don't think they have their future on the team, or we would have already seen him. And when you go into a team like SMU that can run the football as well as throw it, and I think what happens is FSU has shown they have an inability to score points, and because of that, any team that they play that can put some points on the board, FSU just falls further behind. So I don't see them being able to hang on with SMU in this game.
Well, when you look at SMU, they're a prolific offense, averaging 42.3 points per game. To your point, they're averaging 206 rushing yards on the ground. They're also throwing for over 200 with their quarterback, Keith Jennings. And the biggest thing is in terms of run support, they're very solid, holding opposing offenses to less than 4.5 yards per carry. We saw the rushing attack try and get started against Cal last Saturday night. They were inconsistent, put DJU into long third down situations. Again, this is going to be a matchup where Florida State needs the rushing attack, especially on the road. You mentioned it. I think they're going to have to run the football to stay in this ball game. Again, the fact that it's Florida State catching points, we're not talking 2 or 3. We're talking almost a full touchdown at 5.5. I think that'll be a motivational factor, coupled with the fact that SMU hasn't played a conference game yet.
No, they haven't. But again, FSU, the fact that not only can they not run, they can't run for yardage. They haven't been able to stop the run. And that's where SMU, not only can they pass, but they can run the football. And this puts a real pressure on DJU, who is having problems anyway in what he's trying to do for the offensive position. Because, I mean, basically, he's as slow as molasses. He doesn't seem to be able to scramble. He doesn't get out of the way. He can't make plays with his legs or just this movement in the backfield. And then with their inability to run the football, it puts them into a bigger problem in what they have. So, like I said, FSU, I don't think they've got answers to their problems this year. They lost it when they lost the NIL battle at quarterback in the offseason. SMU, on the other hand, if they can just do a good job, don't turn the ball over, I think they're going to be able to score more points. And I like them not only to win, but I do like them to cover.
Yeah, we'll see how that game plays out. I think in order for Florida State to at least be competitive, right, they're going to need DJU to make some plays. I've noticed in regards to long third down situations, Norvell and the offensive staff coach always make them play action with a play fake. Why do they allow him to do that? It's not faking out the front seven. Defensive ends are crashing down on the pocket. Can you walk me through, in terms of the mindset from an offensive perspective, why a coach or an OC would call that type of play on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and long?
Well, what happens is there are certain types of blocking schemes, pass blocking schemes, that your teams become better at. I know as I was the head coach at Auburn, a sprint draw fake was just the best way that I could protect. And the defense, they may know you're not going to run, but they still have to respect it and they have to honor it. So every now and then you get into a situation where your very best 7 or 8 man protection is a play action type of protection. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's the best way to get the ball off. That's probably why they're doing it with DJU. They do it with him. Now, it does usually limit you to 1 or 2 guys you can throw to, because you can't make a play action fake and look at receiver 1, 2, and 3, but it gives you better protection and it gives you a chance to throw the ball downfield.
I think in order for Florida State to be in the game, coach, lower scoring SMU, if you're looking for them to cover the 5.5, you want this game up tempo, get through the total to force the game onto DJU and match you score for score. In terms of the total perspective, do you see that playing out, or do you think Florida State can win a high scoring game?
Well, I think Florida State's better off if their defensive plays well and gets SMU into a lower scoring game. I think the higher the scoring goes, the less chance it is for Florida State to be in this game, because I don't see a lot of scoring potential. They're not running it well enough. The quarterback is having problems. They play good defense. So if they can play good defense and keep the score down low like they did against Cal, I think that's their best chance to win the game and at least cover.
Let's turn our attention to the battle in South Bend. We have Notre Dame and Louisville. Everybody's talking about in regards to the ACC, Miami, and obviously Clemson now coming on in back-to-back weeks with wins over App State and last week against NC State. The team that nobody seems to be talking about is the team that challenged and played in the ACC championship game last year, Louisville against Florida State. This team seems to be coming into form. Tyler Shuck is an added addition to that passing attack. They're undefeated. They did get the win in cover, knocking off Georgia Tech by 12 points. They now go on the road. This is a team in Notre Dame that they defeated last year at home. How do you like Louisville's chances on the road this coming Saturday?
Joe, you covered all the points. I think it's the most undervalued team easily in the ACC, maybe in the country, because of three things. One, their record. They played for the conference championship last year, and they're undefeated this year so far in the season. Two, their quarterback is really a sensational quarterback. I'm not so sure if he wasn't on one of the hot teams, the teams everybody are talking about, he wouldn't be considered a Heisman candidate because he's having a great year. And three, the head coach. The head Jeff Brom knows how to win football games. He knows how to win at Louisville. He's proven what he can do at other schools. So I think they are the most undervalued team. And I think they go to Notre Dame, which they beat last year. Now, Notre Dame did turn the ball over 5 times and only against one last year. But I do think they go to Notre Dame and they win again.
When you see Riley Leonard for the Fighting Irish, right, prior to last week, that 28-3 win over Miami of Ohio, Riley Leonard hadn't thrown a touchdown pass. He gets his first one last week. How important is the passing attack this coming Saturday to at least give an opportunity for Notre Dame to pull this ball game out?
Well, they've got to add the pass back. He's been able to help them mostly with his legs. He's run well. He's got good added yardage with his running game. He's given them a chance to stay close and win ball games. But I think to win a game against Louisville, and Louisville will play very, very good because they're a very confident football team, he's got to be able to throw the ball as well as run it.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Louisville as well, Coach. I think they actually strike the outright upset. I like them plus the points, 6.5, and I like them on the money line. I think the game does sail through the total. And to Tyler Shuck, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. When Coach and I return, we'll be breaking down Clemson, Stanford, North Carolina, and Duke. Coming right back. Keep it where it is. Back on the Bowden Blitz ACC edition, Coach and I are going to talk about the final 2 games on the slate. What a performance by Cade Klubnik and Clemson yet again, laying a huge number, Coach. 18.5 against NC State. They dominate, win that victory by 24 points. We saw the Clemson Tigers rush for over 200 and throw it for over 250 in regards to that matchup. Defense forced turnovers as well. This looks like the Clemson team is old. They're now 60-3 straight up at home in Death Valley. Very difficult to knock off in their home territory. Here comes Stanford, though. They did get the victory last Friday night against Syracuse, basically as a double-digit underdog, 9.5, 10 points. They're now catching 21.5 on the road against Cade Klubnik and the crew. How do you see this game playing out?
No, Clemson's going to win this football game. It's just a matter of whether they cover in this game. But Clemson is a different team than we saw against Georgia. They have a different approach to the game, a different philosophy. And I'm going to tell you what they're doing. I think they made their mind up. They're going to manufacture explosive plays. They didn't have any against Clemson. When I say manufacture, that means the coach has got to call them. For the quarterback to throw deep, you have to call a play that makes him throw deep. And I see them throwing deep, making big plays from the very get-go. From the first quarter on, they're playing differently. And that's the way I saw them call plays. I was there as an analyst back when Trevor Lawrence was there. Now, there's no comparison, I'm sure, with Trevor Lawrence. But they weren't afraid to go deep anywhere at any time. And that's why I see Clemson playing a different ball game. That's why I see Clemson now being a team that now can get back in the hunt for the conference championship. And along with Miami, and let's throw Louisville in there, it's a team that can be competitive with those two teams to play for the conference championship.
Absolutely. And when you look at the performance by Stanford last week against Syracuse, they pounded the rock for 173 yards. How important is the rushing attack to the Stanford Cardinal to sustain drives and keep the better quarterback in Cade Klubnik on the sidelines?
Well, you run the football, you keep the other team on the bench. And that's what you've got to do when you're the underdog and you're kind of a substantial underdog. You've got to get the other team on the sideline not playing and keep your offense out there and keep your defense fresh. You know, when I watched Stanford play, they were a physical football team. And they are a physical football team. And I think that bodes well when you play a team like Clemson, who has so many great athletes on defense. Again, I'm not saying they're going to beat Clemson, but I think they've already shown they can make a very good showing in the ACC. This is just a tough one to get a hold of this week against Clemson and the way they're playing.
And I always talk about third down situations, Coach, right, in regards to sustaining drives. That's a cause of concern for Stanford heading into this matchup. 35%. It's back-to-back road games for the Cardinal. How does that factor in terms of not just the handicapping perspective, but the mental aspect in regards to these kids, you know, playing in New York, then potentially going back home, then going back to South Carolina for this matchup? The wear and tear in regards to the ACC schedule potentially could catch up to Stanford, not just in this game, but by the end of the season.
Well, you know, I think nobody has the answer to that. How much is this traveling schedule going to affect the West Coast teams and how much they have to travel? They do a lot more travel than the ones on the East Coast. And I think I saw where Stanford plans on leaving on Wednesdays for a Saturday game to give them time to rest. It might affect their academics, which you don't think should happen probably at Stanford, but it will allow them to be restful and to get their rest and not be so worn out playing these football games by taking one more day off to travel to their opponent. But I think they are a team, though, that I think that has now gotten some comfort in playing these ACC schools.
Quickly, if Cade Klubnik steps up with another dynamic performance, should he be mentioned in the Heisman if Clemson isn't challenging for an ACC championship? The thought was that he would be the savior for the program. He's starting to play that way over the past couple of weeks.
Well, you know, there's several reasons you get considered for a Heisman. One, you have incredible stats, like last year, the incredible stats of the Heisman Trophy winner, or you have an incredible season. And now I know that Clemson does not play Miami. That would be best, because I think the other thing you like to see, and you'll see it a lot in the SEC, is head-to-head competition by Heisman contenders. Cade Klubnik needs to continue to win, because if you have incredible numbers, that's one thing. But if you got incredible numbers along with an incredible season, a conference champion, that throws you back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly, we talked about Duke and North Carolina. 4-0 Duke playing very well with first-year head coach Manny Diaz going up against Mac Brown. I think Duke moves to 5-0, grinds out another win this coming weekend.
I'm with you. You know, sometimes when you don't play really good opponents early, but you win, you build up confidence. Duke has confidence right now. Duke's going to win with that confidence.
We'll see you all season long right here on the Bowden Blitz. We'll see you next weekend. Have a great weekend.